Honorable Minister, you may proceed, and I am starting the clock running at 4:59.25.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my mother, like so many other Guyanese mothers, is an incredibly strong woman. And throughout my entire life, I've never seen her daunted or flinched by any circumstance. Even in the face of the greatest adversity, she would reassure me and my siblings, and in more recent years, her grandchildren, that no challenge is unsurmountable and that everything happens for a reason. You might ask, Mr. Speaker, why I begin my presentation with this reference. I do so, sir, because the lesson that everything happens for a reason is one that I have held close and dear throughout my adult consciousness. And I make this particular reference at this time because I've seen a lot of questions asked about the quality of the debate over the last 5 days and criticisms expressed about things said on both sides. But I believe very strongly, sir, that the past 5 days were a very important 5 days for this country. Those 5 days happened for a very good reason. Indeed, in equal measure, sir, I've seen a lot of questions asked. We've all seen questions asked about the last 5 years. And I do believe equally the last 5 years also happened for a very important reason. And in exactly the same measure, there's been a lot of debate about why our country had to experience the trauma that we experienced from the 2nd of March to the 2nd of August. I believe, sir, that history and the passage of time will demonstrate to us with abundance that those months between March and August 2020 also happened for an extremely good reason. The bottom line, sir, is that the last 5 years, and indeed the period from March 2nd to August 2nd, and furthermore, the last 5 days, long and arduous though they might have seemed at times, provided the Guyanese people and the world at large how morally bankrupt, technically inept, and insincere the APNU AFC is. And most importantly, sir, those 3 periods demonstrated amply, reminded the Guyanese people successively, the last 5 years, March to August, in the last 5 days, demonstrated to the Guyanese people how much the APNU AFC is disrespectful of the intelligence of the people they profess to represent. I listened, sir, very keenly to the presentation made by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition earlier today. And I must, first of all, thank him for the graciousness of the welcome that he extended to me on my return to Guyana and to this Honorable House. It would not have escaped his notice that his graciousness in that regard was not necessarily reflected across the contributions by those whom he leads in this House. The Leader of the Opposition made a number of important points, and I believe very deliberately adopted a stance intended to convey an impression of magnanimity in some instances, statesmanlikeness in some instances. But it would be remiss of me if I were not to identify a few of the issues that he raised, just to illustrate the point that I'm making, that notwithstanding the pronouncements made by the distinguished Leader of the Opposition, the actions of the APNU AFC in this House and outside of this House are in fact starkly in contrast with the stance that he attempted to adopt today. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition spoke of the fact that the APNU AFC is ready to work together for national development. As he said, the APNU AFC is ready to act, ready to engage. Mr. Speaker, I contrast that statement with the invitation extended by His Excellency the President to former President Granger to meet at a forum of former presidents, which this was a meeting of former presidents, which despite the public pronouncements of how willing they are to engage and how eager they are to be consulted, a meeting of former presidents, an invitation by His Excellency the President to a meeting of former presidents was spurned by former President Granger. The opposition leader spoke, again, in a feigned tone of magnanimity about willingness to engage, trying to convey an impression of civility. But yet, sir, when His Excellency the President came on the 11th of February to address this very House in his inaugural address, not only did the APNU AFC absent themselves from that sitting, but engaged in raucous behavior, raucous and vulgar behavior outside of this chamber, and outside of this compound. And so, sir, it is very easy to stand and say all sorts of things to try to convey an impression of what you are. But the reality, sir, indicates a very different truth. But you know, sir, what it discloses, in fact, sir, is that the APNU-AFC has no respect for the intelligence of the Guyanese people. They believe, and some of them said it. The honorable member, Mr. Ramjatan, spoke about somebody speaking to the gullible supporters. The Guyanese people are not gullible, sir. We don't believe that any Guyanese person is gullible. The Guyanese people are in fact far more sophisticated and far more intelligent than you might believe. So stop saying, and it was said, the record will reflect it. The record will reflect it. Well, of course, on the bloodsucker comment. Instead of standing here and saying all sorts of things that are intended to insult the intelligence of the Guyanese people, when people were watching with their very eyes, their own eyes, you don't think the Guyanese people were watching over the last 5 years? You don't think the Guyanese people were watching from May to August? Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition took great umbrage and devoted a significant part of his presentation to this question of democracy and the events of 2020 and the question of rigging of elections. He devoted a significant part of his presentation to this question. And he said that the accusation that the APNU-AFC attempted to stall democracy in 2020 is a big joke. It didn't happen. Sir, the world was watching. The world was watching, sir. And the world saw not only the events of March to August, but the world had an opportunity now to cast its collective mind back to the entire journey that led to March 2020. And I'm going to come back to that journey in a minute. But on the specific question of the role of the APNU-AFC in stalling of democracy, if the APNU-AFC were to be believed, we would all doubt our eyes. Did we actually see that in one moment the APNU-AFC agreed to a recount, but in another moment one of their candidates went to court to stop the recount? Was this something that I was imagining from Dubai or wherever it was that I'm supposed to have been? Did the world imagine that the APNU-AFC agreed to a recount, invited CARICOM observers to come back, and then deployed one of their own candidates to go to court to try to stop the recount, as the CARICOM observers were arriving at the airport? But the Leader of the Opposition and our friends on that side of the House will have us believe that they never made any attempt to stall democracy. Never happened. Never happened. That court action that was filed is a figment of our imagination. It never happened. And that is not counting the fact that some of these people were apparently on the payroll of the government. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition would have us believe that we all imagined when the Carter Center was told, you cannot come back to Guyana. Can you imagine, sir, saying to the Carter Center, we are not permitting you to come back to observe the elections in the recount in Guyana? Barring international observers from coming back to observe the recount. Did we imagine that? Did we imagine that? Oh my goodness, look who is speaking about Judas. Look who is speaking about Judas. Mr. Nimakaram himself. Mr. Nimakaram, is he the junior Nimakaram? Is the rubber stamp the senior Nimakaram?
Honorable Minister, remember you speak to me, and then secondly,
my apologies.
The language of the Parliament is English.
Mr. Speaker, did we imagine these things? Do we remember, sir, that the CARICOM observers were brought in by a special flight and were waiting to observe the recount, as were representatives of all of the parties, only to be told the convention center had suddenly to be fumigated? Did we imagine that? Did the people of Guyana imagine that? And so, Mr. Speaker, I say, sir, to the opposition leader, it's okay to come and adopt this nice, magnanimous, statesman-like tone, but stop insulting the intelligence of the Guyanese people. They did not imagine all of those things. The fact of the matter is that the APNU AFC were involved in an elaborate scheme to subvert democracy in 2020. But sir, that scheme did not start in 2020. That scheme did not start in 2020, sir. Mr. Speaker, it is well known. It is well known, sir, that Mr. Speaker, as we all looked, Mr. Speaker, as we all looked at the events of the last 5 years, when we look back, a lot of things that did not make sense at the time, with hindsight, make a lot of sense. So let us look back, sir. Mr. Speaker, as I have said on a previous occasion in this House, 3 lists of 6 upstanding Guyanese citizens were proposed to the Leader of the Opposition following a standard formula that has been in place since 1992. 3 lists of 6 each, 18 fine upstanding Guyanese citizens. Mr. Speaker, all 18 of them were rejected as being, and I'm glad to hear the APNU AFC MP maintain the position, rightfully so. They are still citizens of Guyana, sir. They are watching you and listening to you too. They are watching and listening to you too. 18 upstanding Guyanese citizens were cast aside as being not fit and proper and therefore unsuitable to be appointed chairman of GCOM. At the time, the reason wasn't perhaps to everybody completely obvious. We thought maybe it was just momentary madness, momentary disrespect for these 18 people. Sir, and then, in violation of the Constitution, a unilateral appointment was made. That unilateral appointment, sir, as we all know, would subsequently be struck down by the highest court of our land, the Caribbean Court of Justice, as unconstitutional, and rightfully so. You may ask yourself, at the time, sir, a lot of people didn't really understand the significance of that move. They didn't understand, but the pieces were being put in place. The pieces were being put in place. Mr. Speaker, and then we saw the manner in which the APNU AFC, they stand up here now when they talk about public service. The Honourable Member, Ms. Cathy Hughes, stood up and spoke about what has happened to public service in Guyana. What has happened to public service in Guyana? She spoke so eloquently about it. Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC, from the first day they assumed office, set about on a rampage of political persecution against their opponents. A rampage, including people who had given a lifetime of public service. Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to speak about my own example. I'll put myself aside for the moment. I will put myself aside for the moment. I will offer an even more compelling example. That's correct. Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that there's anybody in this country who would dare to think of Dr. Roger Forbes' luncheon with anything but the highest of respect. It has been captured on video for posterity. Police being deployed on political instruction and turning up at the office of the leader of the opposition to say to Dr. Roger Luncheon, "Sir, we have been instructed to come to place you under arrest." Dr. Roger Luncheon, a man who has devoted his entire life to public service in this country, a man who has always served the people of this country with impeccable integrity, more than any of you could ever dream of mustering. Mr. Speaker,
I agree where I am concerned, but the honourable members is something else. So please, you should be the honourable.
The honourable members, of course. Mr. Speaker, the entire world watched with horror. The entire world watched with horror and pain, and many people with tears in their eyes, as Roger Luncheon was manhandled in that manner. And then you dare to come here, the honourable members dare to come here and speak about what has happened to public service? The APNU AFC lowered the tone of political engagement in this country to its lowest level ever during the period 2015 to 2020. I served in 2 previous parliaments, sir, and never before did I hear such personal insults hurled at us on this side from those on that side. Never! Shameless. And so, sir, to come now and to stand and to say what has happened to public service, when in fact such lasting damage was done to the political climate in this country by the behavior of the dictatorial APNU AFC government of 2015 to 2020. Shame on you! Shame on you! I haven't given my example as yet. That's going to be spoken of at the appropriate time. I've given an even more compelling example. My example is going to be given on another occasion. You want to talk about my example? Mr. Speaker, the honourable member wants me to speak about my example. It is a well-known fact, sir. It is a well-known fact, sir, that the APNU AFC government spent hundreds of millions of dollars doing audits high, low, left, right, center, searching everywhere, found not a scintilla of wrongdoing on my part. And then trumped up charges. But I want to finish the story. Trumped up charges. Sir, I came back to Guyana to face those charges. Voluntarily, sir. I came back to face those charges. And I attended court, as any law-abiding and respectful citizen would do. I'm not going to get into the legal merits of the case. The fact of the matter is, sir, let them say to the people what my wrongdoing was. Let them say to the people what my, let them say to the people what my wrongdoing was. Unlike some of you over there who were busy.
Mr. Honorable members, if you want to call their parties a different story.
Very well, sir. Unlike honorable members over there who were busy.
The Deputy Speaker included?
Deputy Speaker excluded, sir.
Always excluded. Always.
Who were busy enriching yourselves at the expense of the public purse. Whether it is using public money to buy bangles and bracelets, whether it is contracting your own company to do business. I hear some talk about Video Mega, all this sanctimonious stand up and pretending to be decent. Sir, I didn't sell any land to myself. I didn't sell any land without public tender or without going to cabinet and get cabinet approval. Having gone through a fully transparent process and acting on the instruction of cabinet, sir, the APNU AFC government, knowing fully well that my integrity was unchallengeable, trumped up charges and brought me back to this country. But I'll tell you what, the story is going somewhere. It's going somewhere. Sir, I attended court. And after the court proceedings were finished, sir, after the court proceedings were finished, and I'm saying this because I want to put it in the public record. After the proceedings were finished, the court finished, I voluntarily get on a plane, buy a plane ticket, pay thousands of dollars to buy this plane ticket, to come back to Guyana to attend court. Voluntarily walk into the court, attended the court proceedings. Court proceedings finished, sir. I was then conveyed down the prisoner's chute. And as I went down the prisoner's chute, sir, there was a long line of policemen. Sir, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating, sir. Sir, every single policeman standing there, without exception, apologized to me. And several of them said, sir, we want to say that we're very sorry to have to put you through this, but please understand that we were instructed politically to do it.
Wicked.
And sir, I will tell you this. In that moment, my faith in the inherent decency of the Guyanese people was restored. Sir, that dictatorial APNU AFC government, I didn't give Guyana nearly as much service as Dr. Roger Luncheon, but I think I've given Guyana a fair bit of service. That dictatorial APNU AFC government, after I came back voluntarily to appear in court, then instructed the policemen to put me in handcuffs and parade me there so that they can take a picture and put it on the front pages of the newspaper. And you dare to come and talk about decency? You dare to talk, the honorable members dare to talk about public service? Mr. Speaker, they believe, sir, that I would somehow have been humiliated or cowed by that. They believe that I would somehow have been humiliated or cowed by that. Sir, I wore those handcuffs as a badge of honor. I wore those handcuffs as a badge of honor. And I said silently to myself, sir, that I will devote the rest of my life to keep these hoodlums out of government forever.
You would have to withdraw that one.
I said, I do withdraw it, sir. And I said in that moment, I will withdraw it, sir, and reformulate it with your permission. In that instant, I will repeat it for emphasis. I wore the handcuffs placed on my wrists by the APNU AFC dictatorship. I wore those handcuffs with pride. And in that instant, I swore to myself that I will devote the rest of my life to ensuring that the APNU AFC is removed from government and never returns to government ever again. You thought that you would cow me or humiliate me? There's nothing that the APNU AFC can do to challenge my integrity, unlike some of the members on that side of the House. Honorable, as some people said, honorable by parliamentary convention. Sir, but I'll tell you what, I was not the only one, sir. Just as I said to myself, I will spend the rest of my life to make sure these people get removed from government. Mr. Speaker, thousands and thousands and thousands of Guyanese people made the same decision. Thousands said, you know what? Maybe we were fooled in 2015, but we ain't making the same mistake again in 2020. So you talk, they like to jump up, Mr. Speaker, they talk about decency, and they talk about integrity. Oh yeah, what the green banners used to say? Honesty, you had banners everywhere. Honesty, decency, and integrity. Honesty, decency, and integrity. Sir, how ironic, how ironic. How ironic, sir. They come, sir, and they want to pretend to be such decent people. I didn't want to mention the, I would leave that to others. Sir, the honorable members on that side of the House, Deputy Speaker accepted, of course, would come here and speak of how decent they are. I sat in horror, sir. One of the paragons, one of the self-appointed paragons of decency over there, self-appointed paragons of decency. Would that be an appropriate expression? One of the self-appointed paragons of decency, sir, the honorable member Cathy Hughes, stood up there. You know, she likes to project herself. The honorable member likes to project herself as some kind of moral compass, moral kind of whatever the words fail me now. And I listened, sir, with horror as this paragon of decency worked through the entire cabinet. She started with Frank Anthony Children. Sir, this is the paragon of decency.
Frank.
The honorable member. Sir, the honorable member Cathy Hughes, the self-appointed paragon of decency on the APNU AFC benches, started first with Frank Anthony's children. The Honourable Member Frank Anthony, Honourable Minister Frank Anthony. Sir, Honourable Minister Anthony's children need no defense from me or from anybody else. They are Guyana scholars. Some of Guyana's, two of Guyana's most brilliant daughters of the current generation. But moreover, they are two young Guyanese girls. Brilliant young Guyanese young ladies. The paragon, and of course, if you listen to the Honourable Member, she is the defender of women, defender of all things that are decent, but has no shame, trying to impugn the integrity of two of Guyana's brightest young women. But not satisfied with that, sir. Not satisfied with that. She then moves on to Honourable Minister Manik Chan's children. Oh, you missed that. She then moved on and brought into the debate Minister Manik Chan's children. Minister Manik Chan's children are babies. They are babies. Bringing them into the debate. And then, sir, not satisfied with that, went on to former President Ramotar's son. Former President Ramotar's son. Making an almost clean sweep. Making an almost, but mind you, the Honourable Member would present herself as the defender of family values and family virtues, and decency, and speaks nicely and so on. But has no shame coming here to bring people's children, to bring people's innocent children into the debate. And so, Mr. Speaker, I make this point really to say that the Guyanese people have been watching and paying attention. The Guyanese people have been watching and paying attention. They were watching and paying attention for the last 5 years. They were watching and paying attention for the 5 months last year, and they've been watching and paying attention to the last 5 days. So don't panic. Mr. Speaker, when I read these articles and I hear this commentary about people, as a matter of fact, sir, the last five days, long and arduous as they might have seemed, were in fact extremely informative and instructive and enlightening. They displayed to the Guyanese people and reminded the Guyanese people of the true and deceptive nature of this APN. Caught my attention. To deliver non-oil GDP in 2021 that will be smaller than that of non-oil GDP that was under the coalition in 2019. She went on. That was what was presented in the budget that was presented in this House. This, Mr. Speaker, is GDP facts. This, Mr. Speaker, is GDP facts. She went on. She said the PPP, I just disclosed her gender, although I said I wouldn't disclose the identity of the PPP. Well, the Member of Parliament went on and said the PPP has the audacity to beat their chests and boast about the ambition to deliver 3 years of economic stagnation. Mr. Speaker, when I heard this, it worried me. I thought perhaps that the printer's devil had gotten the better of my staff's excellent work, the same staff that they claim they like so much and they thank him so much, and who I know worked very hard and very diligently on this speech. I thought for a moment, because I don't sit down and make up these numbers, sir. There are experts. When you talk about national accounts and GDP, this is not something you put your finger in the air and you feel where the wind is blowing and you pluck a number out of thin air. There are people who actually understand the compilation of national accounts, who understand how you calculate value added in the economy, who understand how you measure real growth in the economy. Those very public servants who I call my family and who I regard as my family, and who the APNU AFC profess so much to be grateful to. Sir, this thing bothered me. I thought perhaps that the printer's devil had gotten the better of the excellent work that my staff had done. I summoned a meeting of my staff and I said, look, I heard this thing. Did somehow an incorrect number get printed in the tables or in the text, or can you check it back for me? They checked, sir, and they came back. I don't want to use the language. They are professional public servants. I don't want to use the language that they use. Like I said, they're my family, so they speak freely with me. Suffice it to say, sir, that they were unable to establish the basis for the statement. But the thing was still on my mind. So last Friday evening, I happened to be on the corridor outside. And I asked one of these Parliament office staff to please pass a message to the MP to say that if she would be kind enough, I'd be happy to have a brief word with her. She very graciously consented. And so on the corridor, she was walking by, she stopped and she spoke. And I said to her that I heard that you made this statement. And I'm trying to understand what is the basis for the statement. So she said, which statement? I said, you said that we are projecting lower GDP.
But, Honorable Minister, I had to caution another speaker with a reference to a conversation with Minister Crowell. So I would want to say let's leave that to other person.
So you'd prefer, sir, if I
She's
don't...
not here to defend and to deny.
But she should be here, sir. She's a member of the House.
That's why you have a speaker to help to protect everyone. Remember, I circulated your verbatim conclusion.
Very well, sir. Very well, sir. I wrestled with this matter. I will be guided by you, sir, because I wrestled with this matter. I'm not going to go further with the conversation, but suffice it to say, sir, that she herself was incapable of explaining to me what she was saying. I will only leave it at that. I wouldn't go further and say what else she said to me. She was completely incapable. She had no clue what she was talking about. She had no clue. And had no difficulty standing up and saying it, knowing fully well that it had no basis in fact. But I would be guided by you, sir. I wrestled with this matter. I didn't want to. I would be guided by your better judgment on this matter.
And my better judgment says you have about 7 minutes to conclude.
Very good. And so, sir, I want, perhaps on that note, to move on to yet another example. The APNU AFC, sir, would have us believe that they, amongst the several things that they kept going on about was salary increases for public servants. Somehow trying to convey the impression that the budget 2021 had nothing for public servants. Sir, I would like to make the following points. I invite any member of the public to examine the budget speeches for 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019, the last 4 budget speeches presented by the APNU-AFC. On every instance, those budget speeches, I'm choosing my words carefully, budget speech for 2016 reported historically what salary increase had been awarded historically, but gave no indication in the speech what salary increase will be awarded for 2016 or in 2016. The same was the case in 2017. The same was the case in 2018. The same was the case in 2019. None of those budget speeches, 16, 17, 18, 19, none of them. They all indicated what the increase had been awarded for the previous year, or the preceding year, or the ensuing year. None of them indicated what the budgeted increase for the next year was, not one of them. And I invite anybody to examine the budget speeches for 16, 17, 18, and 19 and prove otherwise. But sir, they come here and they try to create the impression that somehow the budget speech, they know full well, they and their surrogates speaking out there know full well that it is a well-established convention that the budget speech does not announce what salary increase will be awarded in the coming year. But I want to speak also about this business, about public servants, because they come and they profess that how much they did for public servants and the people of Guyana. Sir, I want to give you a small illustration of what the APNU AFC government did to public servants. And they believe, again, that people are naive or stupid. Sir, for this purpose, let us imagine a hypothetical family. A family comprising perhaps a couple, a husband and a wife, maybe, let us say, hypothetically, a policeman and perhaps a teacher, living maybe on the lower flat of the family house. Let us say maybe the wife's father lives upstairs. He's a pensioner, he's a retired public officer. And his son, let us say he's a doctor in the public health care system. So this family comprises the patriarch of the family and his son, who is a medical doctor in the public health care system. And downstairs, the lower flat of the house is occupied by the daughter and her husband, a teacher and a policeman, and their 3 children. Mr. Speaker, this is a family like our family. Many of us can relate to that. That is our family. Or it's a relative of ours or a neighbor of ours. All of us either belong to a family like that or we know a family like that, or many families like that. Sir, first of all, they promised all of the public officers in that house, the doctor, the teacher, the nurse, the policeman. In their manifesto, they promised a 20% salary increase and never delivered it. That's the first point. Secondly, sir, they then decided that they were going to compel public servants, including the doctor, who were on the fixed establishment. They issued a circular to say, not who were on the fixed establishment, who were a contracted employee, or who were contracted employees. They issued a circular to these very public servants that they now profess to whose cause they profess to have championed. They issued a circular to those very public officers and said, as long as you're under the age of 45, we are compelling you to move from contracted status to fixed establishment. Sir, you know what that did immediately? To that doctor upstairs who was a contracted employee, immediately his earnings went down by 22.5%. Because he used to get a 22.5% gratuity every 6 months. He wanted to be on contract gratuity terms because he's a young man. He just graduated as a doctor. He doesn't know if he's going to be in the public service until 55, until he's going to get a pension. He wants to be a contracted employee because he wants to get his gratuity now so that he can save up, so that he can apply for a low-income house lot or a middle-income house lot, so that he can build a house, so that he can start a family of his own. He wanted to be a contracted employee to get his gratuity. This APNU AFC government that come now and want to beat their chests and profess to have championed the cause of public officers said and compelled nearly 8,000 such employees that we're taking away 22.5% of your earnings. We're compelling you to go to the fixed establishment. And if you leave the public service before age 55, tough luck. Tough luck. Sir, that's a 22.5% reduction in immediate earnings. But that is not all. That's not all. They issued another circular that said that we are compelling you to take your leave. And if you don't take your leave will be forfeited because we are no longer paying salary in lieu of leave. Now, sir, we historically, of course, we would tend to encourage people to take their leave because they need to rest and renew and rejuvenate and come back. But oftentimes, sir, many of our public servants, as we all know, are working in environments where perhaps are understaffed, where there's a lot of work to be done, where perhaps they themselves feel that I don't need the full 28 days of leave. I can make do with 2 weeks of leave. I don't mind working. And many public servants historically would accumulate leave and then at some point in time would be paid salary in lieu of leave. Sir, my Ministry of Finance family, the staff of the Ministry of Finance, if you speak with any of them, sir, they can tell you every occasion that they got a salary in lieu of leave payment, they can tell you what they bought with it. Some of them said to me, we bought a laptop to give our daughter. Some said, and these are real cases, you know. Because I said, this salary in lieu of leave that was taken away, was it something that we used to look forward to? Sir, I was given a long list of items. My staff said to me, a member of my staff, sir, said to me, with his voice trembling with emotion, said to me, Minister, I can remember every item that I've bought with my salary in lieu of leave. Every item. Abai,
Honorable Minister, I could remember I gave you notice about 2 minutes ago, so you'll have to wind down.
certainly, sir. And so this particular officer of mine said, bought a laptop, paid for his sister, helped his sister to pay for her tuition fees, bought a TV for his house, bought a 4-burner stove for his house at various times, accumulated cash. Another one said that she accumulated a couple of years of the salary in lieu of leave and then used it as the equity to put up for her loan, to take a loan to build her house on the land, the plot of land that she'd been given by the Ministry of Housing under the previous PPPC government. So that salary in lieu of leave was taken away. They said, take your leave or it's being forfeited because we're not paying salary in lieu of leave. And so when you accumulate the impact of those developments, not to mention, sir, that the mother downstairs with her 3 children, who were school-age children, lost in an instant a $10,000 cash grant for each of her children. That's $30,000 a year that was taken away from her. It's $30,000 a year that was taken away from her. Mr. Speaker, then the father upstairs, who is a pensioner, and the water meter being in his name, lost the subsidy on water, then had to start to pay VAT on water and VAT on electricity. Sir, when you accumulate the impact of all of these measures, when you accumulate and annualize the impact of these measures, and the calculation is very easy to do. The calculation is very easy to do. The impact on that family, which I just described to you over a 5-year period, and you can do the numbers. The impact of APNU, AFC oppressive policies on that family over a 5-year period would be a staggering $4.7 million. That is the impact on that family. No, over a 5-year period. Over a 5-year. Imagine taking away from this is a modest family.
Conclude, the impact will be shutting off your microphone.
I make that point simply to say, sir, that the people of Guyana are not as naive or as gullible as the APNU AFC would have us believe. The people of Guyana are far more sophisticated than that. And the people of Guyana spoke in March 2020 and rejected the oppressive policies of the APNU AFC. The people of Guyana watched on in astonishment from March to August 2020. And even more of them were hardened in their minds, sir, that the APNU AFC neither has the moral authority nor indeed the technical competence to be in government. And sir, my final word would be, the last 5 days, sir, happened for a reason. The last 5 days demonstrated once again to the people of Guyana that the APNU AFC has nothing constructive to offer Guyana. And that is why, sir, the people put them where they are and put the People's Progressive Party Civic where we are. Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to commend Budget 2021 to this Honorable House. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Thank you very much. Honorable members, the general debate on the budget has just concluded.
AFC assortment. And you know, I say assortment because they are a disjointed assortment. They couldn't make up their minds over the 5 days. Some of them said the budget was a copy of their policies. Others said the budget is rubbish. Well, I don't know when you put the two together what they really meant. But you heard all sorts of random noises, disjointed, like I said, inconsistent with each other, and perhaps it might be a leadership problem. But I'm going to say this. I think, Mr. Speaker, that there are a few main points that I would like to make as I conclude this budget debate. First of all, sir, I want to say definitively that the people of Guyana are well aware that the APNU-AFC coalition does not have the moral authority to serve as credible representatives of anybody in this House. Anybody. Not even, and you know, it's really unfortunate because 47% of the Guyanese people, is it 47? Thereabouts. It's really unfortunate, sir, because the truth is, but certainly not after the last 5 days, not to mention the 5 months last year. But sir, the truth is that the 47% of the Guyanese people that they profess to represent really do deserve better. Really do deserve better. Mr. Speaker, the moral bankruptcy of the APNU-AFC is illustrated not only by their failure to implement their own manifesto promises, but also by the consistent acts of policy deception, repeatedly saying that they were cutting taxes when in fact they were collecting more taxes and imposing more taxes. Saying in one breath that they are reducing taxes, but in fact slapping taxes on electricity, on water, on medical supplies, on education services, on construction materials, on health services, on heavy equipment and machinery. And then Mr. Speaker, the people of Guyana were getting their electricity bills. They could see the VAT on the electricity bill. But the government said, we put on no new tax. Stop insulting the intelligence of the people. Come on. Mr. Speaker, they keep professing their own integrity, but the people of Guyana can see. This morning or yesterday morning, we woke up to stories of the Honorable Cathy Hughes contracting her own company. And I will tell you what, those documents that have been disclosed relate to the Ministry of Telecommunications. If you look more widely across government, you will be shocked to see how much business that company was getting across government. But they think people don't know, they think people are stupid. The land grab, sir. They believe that people don't know, but at the appropriate time, these things will be disclosed. They like to talk about Pradoville 1 and Pradoville 2. Sir, if you count up how many of them were busy grabbing, you know why they were holding on to power between March and August? You know how many of them get land between March and August? Sir, when the facts are disclosed, it will be discovered.
You've lost me. I don't know who they were and the.
Well, sir, when the facts are disclosed at the appropriate time and the charges are laid, you will see, in fact, they talk about Pradoville 1 or 2. They were busy establishing, I don't know what to call it, perhaps Riggsville, because the riggers were there. They were busy establishing a Riggersville, populated by themselves and their family. They think people don't know. They think people don't know. They were busy, sir, creating a Riggersville where I don't want to talk about anybody's children, sir. I don't want to talk about anybody's children. So I'm not going to do that. But they were busy establishing a Riggersville, giving themselves, and they believe people don't know, sir. They come here, what was the phrase used? Sanctimonious?
You can't use gangster.
My apologies, sir.
You can't use the G word.
Oh, no. It wasn't I was.
And please, it's the honorable members or comrade. That's the SOs.
Certainly, sir. Well, I wouldn't start with the firearm licenses, as admonished by the Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, but this pattern of deception that was set out over the last 5 years, they think that people don't know these things. Guyana is a small place. Mr. Speaker, this pattern of deception that was set out over the last 5 years actually manifested itself again over the last 5 days. Sir, I didn't want to descend into the puerile. You think I shouldn't? Sir, the litany of untruths and misrepresentations in full view of the world at large. Sir, they started out, I think their first speaker placed her trump card. You know what her trump card was? Oh, well, yes, of course, that one. There was one that I took a little bit more personally. Her trump card, putting aside the rant, the race-based rant, her trump card, her pièce de résistance, was that the finance minister didn't thank his staff. So that was like the trump card. She said it like she was delivering a knockout punch. It was the honorable member Anand Prasad spoke about floating like a butterfly and stinging like a bee. The honorable member, which we all know is a boxing reference, a reference to the man who, Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. The honorable member, Amanza Walton Desir, stood up, and delivered what clearly she felt was her punch, her knockout punch, that the finance minister didn't thank his staff. Sir, not only was it on video and captured in a Hansard, for permanent, the Hansard is the official record of what the proceedings of this House are. Knowing fully well that this was not true, after the user caused to be circulated the official record, they're still repeating it. And you know what, sir? What's the motive? They want to somehow say to my staff that I didn't thank my staff. They are so simple-minded, sir. Mr. Speaker, I almost born and grew up in the Ministry of Finance, right? Some of them were still running around in their short pants when I was already working in the Ministry of Finance. These people who comprise my family, the staff of the Ministry of Finance are my family. I have been in the Ministry of Finance for 20 years, 2001 to now. I don't believe that there's anybody who got married when I was around and in the country whose wedding I didn't go to. I don't believe there's anybody working in the ministry whose child would visit the ministry and they won't bring their child upstairs to see me, or I won't go downstairs to meet their child and gaff with their child. If their parents ain't feeling good, they can come and tell me their father ain't feeling good. And I'm going to stay in touch with them and they'll keep me. But these people are my family, sir. To be so simple-minded to come here and parrot this thing like somehow Ashni Singh, the staff of the Ministry of Finance, will think, oh my goodness, the APNU AFC is so good to us. Yeah, she was reading. She was reading faithfully. Most of them read very faithfully. It was comical, sir. But there were other things. And I'm making this point really just to say how simple. I suppose if you're simple-minded, you kind of assume that the whole world is simple-minded too. So you kind of assume that, well, everybody's stupid. They're going to believe any stupidness we tell them. And I repeat again, don't insult the intelligence of the Guyanese people. Do not insult the intelligence of the Guyanese people. You thought you could have done it from 2015 and 2020, and they put you in your place. All sorts of misrepresentations. All sorts of misrepresentations. The budget had no provision for COVID vaccines. The budget is projecting a... Sir, I want to relate a story. I want to relate a true story. Oh yes, it was... No, Iwata. Ironies and Iwata. Sir, one of the more defining and depressing moments over the past week, for me, took place last Friday evening. Because I am not like members on that side of the House, and I take great pride in that. And I really do believe that young MPs, irrespective of which side they're sitting on, should be encouraged and should be given an opportunity to grow and develop. I will not name the Member of Parliament concerned. But sir, there's a certain Member of Parliament, a young Member of Parliament, on that side of the House, who spoke very well, stood up at the podium and spoke very eloquently, with a very credible face, and spoke on matters related to the economy. Pronounced, and I'm going to quote, I asked to get the verbatim transcript. She said, sir, the PPP comes with some illogical source of confidence to proudly proclaim that it is their hope and ambition to deliver non-oil GDP. This is the part that